Hello, my name is Beth Miller. I live in Canberra, Australia. I was not a sewer for many years. I grew up in Darwin, which is the capital of Northern Territory, which is subtropical. And of course, it was very hot and humid for half the year and very hot for the other half. So sewing didn't come into my life for quite a while. When I left school, I became a nurse and I graduated as a registered nurse. And I met my husband, we got married, and we had three of our four children in Darwin. Cyclone Tracy came along in 1973 and decimated Darwin. So we decided that we would travel further south and we came to Canberra via Alice Springs. So we've been living in Canberra ever since. Canberra is the capital of Australia, and it is a really nice place to live. It's quite small. It only has, I think, about 60,000 people, no, 600,000 people, I think it is. So it's quite small, but it's surrounded by bush, and it is really, really lovely place to get inspiration and everything from. We had our last child when we came here, and when she was at probably when she first started school, I decided it was too hard to do nursing. So what I did was I went and decided I'd have a career change. So I applied to go to the Canberra School, Canberra Tech, Canberra CIT, Canberra Institute of Technology, and I did an art course, which is basically design and then printmaking, for all different types of printmaking. I had started quilting, and so it was really handy to have all those sort of things with what I was doing. And I suppose the catalyst for me was I did a workshop with an American tutor called Elizabeth Bush, and when we were doing the workshop, she was telling us how to develop our work, and it was almost like a light bulb moment. I thought everything that I have learnt at school applied to what I was doing. And also, as I mentioned to you before, I'm a photographer as well. So the photography all linked together. And this is where I had started patchwork, as I said, but I was mainly doing traditional work, but I really liked the applique. So the applique was really good. And the other thing that was really instrumental was fusible web came in, which meant I was able to do really intricate work instead of having to turn all my seams over, which was really lumpy. So all of that came to where I started doing applique quilts. Well, as I mentioned before, Canberra is surrounded by bushlands. I love the animals and the birds here. They're really very diverse. And also the scenery is really spectacular. Um, most of the people who live in Australia live on the eastern seaboard. So we have beautiful beaches and we have lots of the big coral reefs as well. But then as you go inland, the centre is desert. So we go from this lush surroundings to a desert scene where the soil is red, but beautiful sceneries, lovely mountain ranges, and lots of interesting things. So when when my husband and I we used to take our children out and we would do a lot of camping out in the bush. So I always took photos of the birds and the animals and the sceneries and the waterfalls, anything that was interesting. And then I would come back and convert them into a quilt. Um, I think I think it is the joy of being able to create a textile image from a photograph or several photographs, which I will collage together, and then make it into an image that is pleasing to me. And I try to always make sure that does happen, because if I'm not happy with the image, I don't think anyone else would be as well. So I do work to please myself first of all, and then if someone else likes it, I treat it as a bonus. If it gets into an exhibition, it's a double bonus. If it wins a prize, it's whoopee, let's party. So that's my philosophy, and I think it's a really easy one to work with. Um, doesn't put too much pressure on yourself, but I like I like the finished product. I'm very lucky. I have a 9 meter by 3.5 meter workspace. So I've divided it up into three sections where I have a very large table where I can do all my applique work on it. And then the next section is the sewing machine area. And then the last section is the quilting section. And then along the wall, I have a very big design wall. So it's sort of a progression up the room, if you're sort of like. I do have a Sweet 16 which is a quilting machine, so it does allow me to have that extra space to do my quilting on. So I can work on bigger quilts. I'm not restricted to smaller ones.
Mm.
I start off with drawing my design um, full scale onto a piece of paper. And I can look at it then and I can make any adjustments that I need. And I think applique is a really forgiving sort of uh, technique, because if you find that you think everything looks perfect on a piece of paper, you can, and then when you start to put your applique together and it doesn't go as well as what you think it is, you can take out a section without having to, um, because at that stage it's not sewn down. So I can just lift out a section and change that without having to really pull apart the whole quilt. So once I've finished my design, I will then get an overlay, which is like a piece of violin, and I will draw my design on the violin, working with all the values, and I work with like a number system. So I'll start with 1 and go up to 100 sort of thing. And on each little shape, I will put the number, and also I'll put the value, what value it is, whether it's light. I work with light, medium dark, and dark. So it's 5 different values. And so I will put those onto the pieces then. And I think the most important thing is when you use a violin, I use a fusible web to put onto my fabric. But because the web is, you have to work back to front. So it's really important to put right side, and know which is the right side and the wrong side of the violin, because you have to turn it over and then you put your fusible web on top. Cut that out, and then you start ironing on your background fabric, and you start building up your design from that. It varies. Well, it varies according to the size of the piece, of course, but if it's say a medium size quilt, it would probably take me about 4 months to get my ideas together, to draw my drawings, and then to do the process of the applique, and then the process of stitching it down, and then the quilting. So, and then of course the binding, the finishing touches. So I'd say roughly around 4 months. Bigger pieces might take me a little bit longer. I do spend a lot of time out in the studio, but I have to sort of fit in family commitments and work bits, volunteering and things like that.
Hmm.
So yes, roughly around between 4 to 5 months. Yes and no. When I first started, I was using really all commercial fabrics. But once I learned how to dye fabrics and print fabrics, it totally changed, because now I can look at part of my design and it's easier for me to draw with paint or textile pens and pencils that are out these days. You have such a wide variety. So I do a lot of drawing on the fabric, and then setting it so it won't rub off or um, help stop fading and things like that. But yes, I tend to do more of that these days and use less of the commercial fabrics. I do like batiks, the batiks fabrics, because they're quite bright and vibrant in their color, but also they have very subdued or vibrant sometimes designs on them. But the most important thing with those is they have a tight weave, and the weave, when you cut the fabric out, it doesn't fray as much as what some of the other cottons do. I mainly do use cotton. I very rarely use anything else. Um, I think the biggest challenge is to get your values right, because you're trying to create a realist. Well, what I'm trying to do is create a realistic image. And so the values have to be in the correct places to create the dimension or the shape of what I'm trying to do. So when I design things, I always do a black and white color of the image of the photo that I'm using, and that is usually a good indication of where everything it is. But occasionally you'll find that the value might be wrong, or now I have to change the fabric to rectify it.
Hmm.
Sometimes that is just a bit of trial and error, but it's usually not hard. And this is where, as I mentioned before, it's good with the applique system. I can just take out that area which is not working and redo the same shapes that I've got in that section, and then put
Hmm.
it back in, and I can see without gluing it down with the iron. I can put it back in, check that it's okay, and then if it's not, then keep working on it until it is.
Hmm.
Okay. This We're very lucky. We live very close, about 15 to 20 minutes away from a big nature reserve called Tidbinbilla. And the so we go out there quite regularly. You can go out there and have barbecues and everything. And so I've taken a lot of photos of the emus that are out there.
Hmm.
And uh, I really like them because they're big birds. They're probably similar to sort of an ostrich, the height of those, and they sort of sneak up behind you when you're having a barbecue, and they'll lean over and they'll pinch your sausages and things like that, and then run away and make these funny noises. And they do have amazing faces, which is really good for a photographer and trying to do these. So I had all these images of the emus, and in 1973, 2003 it was, we had the big bushfires that came through Canberra, and Tidbinbilla Reserve was really badly hit. And a lot of the animals that were there, unfortunately, were died. They died with the fire, or they were badly injured. So I was just hoping that these two emus that I had were, one of the ones that escaped.
mhm,
And so it was sort of like, um, what's it, when a disaster happens, you try to have something that is positive, and
mhm.
that was what this one was. I was just hoping that those two would, two that survived. Um, it it was lovely to be selected. To think that your work is um, in this, that you can be part of a global exhibition, and your work is good enough to be selected in that large group. Some very famous people are in this exhibition. And I think it's just nice that my piece, I was really excited.
Mhm.
Um, I hope that they get enjoyment looking at the birds. Um, I find there's a lot of joy when you're around birds. They make, well, for me, they make me feel happy, and I hope that when people see them, they think, well, they are just lovely, lovely birds. I think I think it's probably the best advice I can give anyone is to have a go. We all have to start somewhere, but if you don't start, you're never going to go anywhere. So have a go. Don't do it to the best of your ability at that time. Like, I look back at my early pieces, and I think, I look at them and I think, gosh, I've improved. I I do always try to do a workshop every year that is interesting to me, and so I'm learning new techniques. So if you have a go at doing something, and then you continue on it, continue to learn how to do new things, you have to improve. It's a way that we all work, and be proud of your work. If you do the best that you can at that particular time, you're always going to improve. And the other thing too is probably look at other people's work, see how they do their work, see how they put their colors together, um, and just keep trying. I the background piece, if I was doing it now, I would probably do it differently. But this was very early. This was one of my very early pieces. I think I'd only made about 6 quilts prior in this technique prior. Um, I would probably do it differently now, but at that time, it was what I knew best how to do, and I I still think it's a lovely piece. I think, yeah, no, I am still really happy with it.